It is mid-January, which means, of course, I'm already looking at the releases that are happening in February of 2025. These are my 22 most anticipated book launches. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for showing up, and I hope that you get a great selection of books off of this video. If you are not new to my channel, you know that it's been a hot second since you've seen me. I am going to have an update at the very end. If you're interested in that, then you can stick around for that, or you can skip to it, whatever it is that you want to do. But I am going to go directly into the meat of this video, which is all of the anticipated releases that I am so excited for in February. There are so many awesome books that are coming out this month, and there are books that are coming out that are like the end of a trilogy or authors that I already love and that I've already read. So February is actually a spectacular month of book releases. The way that I'm going to go through them is alphabetical order. If you want like a concise list of the books by publication date so you can keep an eye on them when they're actually releasing, that's going to be on slides all the way at the end. I'll have the 22 that I talk about, and then I'll also have like honorable mentions on those slides as well. So you can skip to that, or you can stay and get the blurbs for everything. But like I said, the books are going to be in alphabetical order. I'm going to read the blurb, and I'm going to tell you why they made it onto the top 22 anticipated reads list. Also, I'm going to give advance notice for apologies for not pronouncing names correctly, whether it's the author's name or whether it's the name of characters. I could never be an audiobook narrator. I stumble so much when I speak, and I stumble over names like hard. Our first novel on the list is Beartooth by Callan. This is an adult like thriller survivalist novel, which is typically out of my scope of what I'm keeping an eye on, but this one intrigued me. Two brothers in dire straits, living on the edge of Yellowstone, agree to a desperate act of survival in this taut, propulsive novel reminiscent of the works of Cormac McCarthy and Donald Ray Pollock. In an aging timber house hand-built in the Absaroka Beartooth Mountains, two brothers are struggling to keep up with their debts. They live off the grid, on the fringe of Yellowstone, surviving off the wild after the death of their father. Thad, the elder, is more capable of engaging with things like the truck registration or the medical bills they can't afford from their father's fatal illness, or the tax lien on the cabin their grandfather built, while Hazen is different, more instinctual, deeply in tune with the natural world. Desperate for money, they are approached by a shadowy out-of-towner with a dangerous proposition that will change both of their lives forever. Beartooth is a fast-paced tale with moments of surprising poignancy set in the grandeur of the American West. Evoking the timeless voices of the American pastoral storytelling, this is a bracing, masterful novel about survival, revenge, and the bond between brothers. So normally I'm like a romance, fantasy, mystery thriller, not just thriller reader. I think, as illogical it sounds, the logic behind this was the fact that it is so far outside of what I read, but it hit different components that I am interested in. I spend a lot of time indoors, but I am a huge like outdoor enthusiast. When I get the chance to go hike, go camping, I do that. I constantly am following like van lifer people. I got really big into watching videos of people who live off grid. So when this popped up, I was like, oh, this ticks a lot of boxes of what I'm just like vaguely interested in, and it stood out to me. Beartooth launches on February 11th. Next up is Blackwood's Blue Sky by Eowyn Ivey. This is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but it's not magical, I don't think. It's very much set in a realist and contemporary setting. And it's also kind of got that survival theme, that mystery theme, and it is adult. New York Times bestselling author Eowyn Ivey returns to the mythical Alaska landscape of her Pulitzer Prize finalist, The Snow Child, with an unforgettable reimagining of Beauty and the Beast that asks the question, can love save us from ourselves? Birdie's keeping it together. Of course she is. So she's a little hungover sometimes on her shifts, and has to bring her daughter Emmeline to work while she waits tables at an Alaskan roadside lodge. But it's a tough town to be a single mother, and Emmeline never goes hungry. Still, she remembers happier times, trout fishing with her grandfather and hiking in the tundra, being free in the world of nature. Arthur Nielsen is a soft-spoken recluse with scars across his face, who brings Emmeline back to safety when she gets lost in the woods one day. He speaks with a strange cadence, appears in town only at the change of seasons, and most people avoid him. But for Birdie, he represents everything she's ever longed for. He lives in a cabin in the mountains on the far side of the Wolverine River, and tells Birdie about the caribou, marmots, and wild sheep that share his untamed world. She falls in love with him in the land he knows so well. Against the warnings of those who care about her, Bertie moves to his isolated cabin. She and her daughter are alone with Arthur in a vast wilderness, hundreds of miles from roads, telephones, electricity, or outside contact. But Bertie believes she has come prepared. She can start a fire and cook on a wood stove. She has her rifle and fishing rod. In the beginning, it is an idyllic life. The three of them catch salmon, pick berries, and swim in sunlit waters. But soon Bertie realizes that she is not at all prepared for what lies ahead. Arthur harbors a dark secret unlike anything she'd ever imagined, and she learns that the Alaska wilderness is as mysterious and dangerous as it is beautiful. Blackwood's Blue Sky is a suspenseful novel with life and death stakes about the love between a mother and a daughter, and about the lure of a wild life, about what we gain and what it might cost us. So I'm always interested in a retelling and want to read the blurb and see what it's going to be about and see if it will interest me beyond just the fact that it's a retelling. And I think kind of similar to Beartooth, this stood out to me because it's a little different. It doesn't have that kind of whimsical aspect that most storytelling has, unless you're considering like the whimsy of nature, but that fantastical whimsy. But I like that survivalist portion of this and that kind of living away from civilization portion of this. There's also a book talker that I follow who mentioned this in her video, and I tend to trust her opinions on books, and she has read an Eowyn Ivey before and liked that book that she read. So, giving this a shot, it's a little out there for me, but it sounds very interesting. Blackwood's Blue Sky publishes on February 4th. Next up on the list is The Bones Beneath My Skin by TJ Klune. I think that this is going to be more sci-fi than fantasy, but it probably could lean either way, and it is an adult. And then it's also got a little bit of romance in it, as Klune's books tend to have. In the spring of 1995, Nate Cartwright has lost everything. His parents are dead, his older brother wants nothing to do with him, and he's been fired from his job as a journalist in Washington, D.C. With nothing left to lose, he returns to his family's summer cabin outside the small mountain road of Roseland, Oregon, to try and find some sense of direction. The cabin should be empty. It's not. Inside is a man named Alex, and with him is an extraordinary little girl who calls herself Artemis Darth Vader. Artemis, who isn't exactly as she appears. Soon it becomes clear that Nate must make a choice, let himself drown in the memories of his past, or fight for a future he never thought possible. Because the girl is special, and forces are descending upon them who want nothing more than to control her. I have no idea how I didn't know Klune was releasing a book until I put together my post for my website with my anticipated releases. I am a huge fan of TJ Klune. I've read his Kindness trilogy, and then I've also read his most recent, I believe his most recent release, Somewhere Beyond the Sea. I love his voice. I like how he can take a concept that is kind of overdone, but because of his voice, it sounds unique and original and new. But the way that he writes his characters, I feel like are really easy to identify with them. The way that he writes specifically an adult and child bond, like we saw in House in the Cerulean Sea, and what I'm hoping we're going to see here, is so beautiful. Like, I just think that his stories are beautiful, and they leave my heart warm. The Bones Beneath My Skin publishes on February 4th. Next up is But Not Too Bold by Hache Pueyo. This is an adult horror, and it's also a novella. We're just going to jump straight into the blurb, actually. The Shape of Water meets Mexican Gothic in this sapphic monster romance novella wrapped in Gothic fantasy trappings. The old keeper of the keys is dead, and the creature who ate her is the volatile lady of the capricious house, Anatima, an enormous humanoid spider with a taste for laudanum and human brides. Dahlia, the old keeper's protege, must take up her duties, locking and unlocking the little drawers in which Anatima keeps her memories. And if she can unravel the crime that led to her predecessor's death, Dahlia might just be able to survive long enough to grow into her new role. But there's a gaping hole in Dahlia's plan that she refuses to see. Anatima cannot resist a beautiful woman, and she eventually devours every single bride that crosses her path. I don't think you could possibly put a sapphic monster romance in front of me and ask me not to read it. This absolutely had to go on the list. But beyond that, I also think that this concept of like memories being locked in drawers and then there being a keeper there to unlock and relock the drawers to these memories is really cool. I'm all about a Gothic setting, especially since we have like the cold weather and the rain and everything happening, I think, for the next couple of weeks where I live. So anything Gothic automatically fits that for me. It's very ambiance for now. But Not Too Bold publishes on February 11th. Next up is Dating and Dragons by Kristy Boyce. This is a young adult romance. From the author of the nationally best-selling Dungeons and Drama comes another gaming romance that's sure to win you over. Quinn Norton is starting over at a high school in hopes that joining a D&D game will be the trick to making friends. The plan sounds even better when she's invited into a group that includes Logan Weber, the cute and charming guy she met on her first day of class. But this isn't your average D&D campaign. This group live streams their games and enforces strict rules. No phones allowed, and no dating other group members. Quinn is willing to accept the rules, even if it makes Logan off limits. And she quickly learns that doing so won't be a problem, since Logan goes from charismatic to insufferable as soon as she agrees to join. As their bickering and bantering intensifies inside and outside the game, Quinn can't help wondering, is Logan's infuriating behavior a smokescreen for hidden feelings? Quinn is risking it all, and the 20-sided dice are rolling. So I am a librarian in Texas, and every single year we put together a display of Tayshaus winners, which is Texas award-winning novels for young adults. And the other book that was mentioned, Dungeons and Drama, actually was a top 10 winner for 2024. So I kind of already had an eye on Boise. When this novel launched and I realized it was coming out in February, I was like, oh, this is perfect. I don't know how you could possibly be a nerd and not be excited about anything that has to do with Dungeons and Dragons. I'm really hoping this will give me the same feels as Ali Hazelwood's Check-in Mate did, because I truly loved that novel. I haven't read the first novel, Dungeons and Drama, by Boise, but I do have it on hold. It's going to take a while to come in. I am excited to read this one as well. Dating and Dragons publishes on February 4th. Speaking of Ali Hazelwood, the next book is Deep End, which is her newest romance that she's launching, but it's not a STEM. It's going to be a sports. Still academia setting, though. Scarlett Vandermeer is swimming upstream. A junior at Stanford and a student athlete who specializes in platform diving, Scarlett prefers to keep her head down, concentrating on getting into med school and on recovering from injury that almost ended her career. She has no time for relationships. At least, that's what she tells herself. Swim captain, world champion, all-around aquatics golden boy, Lucas thrives on discipline. It's how he wins gold medals and breaks records. Complete focus with every stroke. On the surface, Lucas and Scarlett have nothing in common, until a well-guarded secret slips out, and everything changes. So they start an arrangement, and as the pressure leading to the Olympics heats up, so does their relationship. It was supposed to just be a temporary, mutually satisfying fling. But when staying away from Lucas becomes impossible, Scarlett realizes that her heart might be treading into dangerous water. I have no idea what noise I made when his last name popped up, but I had no idea how to even attempt pronouncing it, and then the whole thing just kind of fell apart. But I am a huge Hazelwood fan. I have read almost everything that she's released, including the novellas. I have not read Bride yet. I just haven't been in the mood for some reason, which is crazy because it's something that I definitely would read. I'm so excited for this. I love her STEM, but I'm very excited for a sports-centered romance. I don't know. Hazelwood's voice is just so chaotic but authentic and hits very close to stream of conscience, but also like pulls back enough to have, you know, nice one-liners and correct grammatics in the novels. So we'll always pick up a Hazelwood for sure. Deep End publishes on February 4th. Next up is Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales by Heather Fawcett. This is an adult fantasy romance. The third installment in the heartwarming and enchanting Emily Wilde series about a curmudgeonly scholar of folklore and the fae prince she loves. Emily Wilde has spent her life studying fairies. A renowned dryadologist, she has documented hundreds of species of folk in her Encyclopedia of Fairies. Now, she is about to embark on her most dangerous academic project yet, studying the inner workings of a fairy realm, as its queen. Along with her former academic rival, now fiancé, the dashing and mercurial Wendell Bambleby, Emily is immediately thrust into the deadly intrigues of Fairy as the two of them seize the throne of Wendell's long-lost kingdom, which Emily finds a beautiful nightmare filled with scholarly treasures. Emily has been obsessed with fairy stories her entire life, but at first she feels as ill-suited to Fairy as she did to the mortal world. How can an unassuming scholar such as herself pass for a queen? Yet, there is little time to settle in, for Wendell's murderous stepmother has placed a deadly curse upon the land before vanishing without a trace. It will take all of Wendell's magic and Emily's knowledge of stories to unravel the mystery before they lose everything they hold dear. I read the first two books in the Emily Wilde trilogy. I have been anticipating the third book for so long. The way that Heather Fawcett can write in epistolary, I forget how you say that word, but the letters, you know, the story's being told through Emily's field journal where she's writing. And the way that that voice can come across as a field journal, like you know that you're reading her notes, and she even has footnotes in there, which is just phenomenal, but it still feels like you're experiencing the story right alongside the character. I mean, it's just brilliant. Everything about this book is brilliant, from the voice to the way that the narrative style happens, to the writing, to the storyline itself, to the world build. Just, it's phenomenal. Next up is Famous Last Words by Gillian McAllister, and this is an adult mystery thriller. From the author of Reese's book club pick and New York Times bestseller Wrong Place, Wrong Time comes an addictive thriller about a new mother's world upended when her husband commits a terrifying crime. How well does she truly know the man she loves? And what danger does she face if her entire life has been built on a lie? It is June 21st, the longest day of the year, and new mother Camilla's life is about to change forever. After months of maternity leave, she will drop her infant daughter off at daycare for the first time and return to her job as a literary agent. Finally. But when she wakes, her husband Luke isn't there, and in his place is a cryptic note. Then it starts. Breaking news. There's a hostage situation developing in London. The police arrive and tell her Luke is involved, but he isn't a hostage. Her husband, doting father, eternal optimist, is the gunman. What she does next is crucial, because only she knows what the note he left behind that morning says. Famous Last Words is the story of a crime, a marriage, and more secrets than Camilla ever could have imagined. This novel cements Gillian McAllister's reputation as the best at putting her characters in impossible situations and making her readers not only contemplate, but feel what it would be like to find themselves in those situations. And the quote there at the end was from Emily Henry. I've heard a lot of really great things about McAllister's work, but I just haven't been interested enough in the concepts to actually pick up one of her books. That ends here. I am hooked by this blurb. I have to know what the note says. I have to know what's going on. I want to know how she couldn't have realized that this is something her husband, like, there's so much happening here that I have to know. Can you guys stop? There's a bone involved right now. But she hooked me. I'm caught. I really want to read this. Famous Last Words publishes on February 25th. A hopeless romantic meets a demoralized radio host in this cozy, Sleepless in Seattle inspired love story from beloved author B.K. Borison. Aiden Valentine has a secret. He's fallen out of love with love. And as the host of Baltimore's romance hotline, that's a bit of a problem. But when a young girl calls into the station asking for dating advice for her mom, the interview goes viral, thrusting Aiden and heartstrings into the limelight. Lucy Stone thought she was doing just fine. She has a good job, an incredible family, and a smart, slightly devious kid. But when all of Baltimore is suddenly scrutinizing her love life, or lack thereof, she begins to question if she's as happy as she thought. Maybe a little more romance wouldn't be such a bad thing. Everyone wants Lucy to find her happy ending, even the handsome, temperamental man calling the shots. But when sparks start to fly behind the scenes, Lucy must make the final call between the radio-sponsored Happily Ever After or the man in the headphones next to her. I can't quite put my finger on why this already has my heart in a chokehold. I think it might have something to do with the fact that it has the daughter calling in, and then also with the way that the blurb was written, it really reminds me of kind of the layout of Emily Henry's novels, where there's definitely a romance plot that's propelling things forward, but there's so much commentary on life and, you know, the things that start to happen as you're just going along in your day by day. I really think that I'm going to enjoy this. And if you happen to be a subscriber to Afterlight, this will be your February book. First Time Caller publishes on February 11th. Next up is Greenteeth by Molly O'Neill, and this is a cozy fantasy. Narrated by a lake-dwelling monster, Greenteeth is an utterly charming tale of fae, folklore, and found family, perfect for fans of T. Kingfisher. Beneath the still surface of a lake lurks a monster with needle-sharp teeth, hungry and ready to pounce. Ginny Greenteeth has never spoken to a human before, but when a witch is thrown into her lake by an angry mob, something makes Ginny decide she's worth saving. Temperance doesn't know why her village has suddenly turned against her, only that it has something to do with the malevolent new pastor. All she wants is to return to her husband and children, still trapped under his baleful influence. Though they have nothing in common, these two unlikely companions must band together on a magical quest to defeat the evil that threatens Temperance's family, Ginny's Lake, and possibly the very soul of Britain. Something that I love about monster stories, similar to T. Kingfisher's Thornhedge or Wiswell's Someone You Can Build a Nest In, is that the monsters are so far outside of human society that they see society for exactly what it is, which is a construct in order to like perpetuate certain ideals or hierarchies. And typically what ends up happening is these monsters portray more humanity than the actual humans. I adore a story like that. I love the way that it looks at how our society is built and the way that people become just accustomed to interacting within civilization. So I'm very excited for Greenteeth. It's comped to T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher has a quote on the front. This is right up my alley for sure. Greenteeth publishes on February 25th. Next up is Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. This is a retelling. It's a retelling of Carmilla, and it's an adult gothic horror. 10 years into their marriage, Lenore's relationship with her husband, Henry, has soured, and no child has arrived to fill the distance between them. Lenore's frustration grows when Henry's ambitions, both work and societal, take them out of London and into the countryside, to the imposing Nethershaw Manor, where he is planning to host a hunt. Lenore keeps a terrible secret from the last time her husband hunted, and though they never speak of it, it haunts their marriage to this day. A carriage accident near their home soon brings the mysterious Carmilla into Lenore's life. Carmilla, who is weak and pale during the day, but vibrant at night. Carmilla, who will not eat meals with the family. Carmilla, who stirs up a hunger deep within Lenore. Torn between regaining her husband's affection and the desire Carmilla's presence awakens in her, Lenore begins to unravel her past. Her search leads her to uncover a darkness in her household that's set on destroying her. Hungerstone is a mesmerizing reclamation of the lesbian vampire trope, set against the backdrop of the voracious appetite of the Industrial Revolution. So we already know that if it's a sapphic monster story, I am in, but this is also, it's giving gothic, it's giving forbidden, it's giving dark and seductive, it's giving feminist, like it's just ticking all of these boxes on top of the fact that this cover is phenomenal. So again, like really excited for this one. I do hate that I haven't read the original Carmilla that this is based upon, but I honestly probably won't get around to it before I read Hungerstone. Hungerstone publishes on February 18th. Next up is Needy Little Things by Channelle Desamours, and this is a young adult fantasy mystery thriller. In this debut speculative YA mystery, a black teen with premonition-like powers must solve her friend's disappearance before she finds herself in the same danger. Soraya Lee Bryant can hear what people need, tangible things, like a pencil, a hair tie, a phone charger, an ability only her family and her best friend, Malcolm, know the truth about. But when she fulfills a need for her best friend Deja, who vanishes shortly after, Soraya is left wondering if her ability is more curse than gift. This isn't the first time one of her friends has landed on the missing persons list, and she's determined not to let her become yet another forgotten black girl. Not trusting the police and media to do enough on their own, Soraya and her friends work together to figure out what led to Deja's disappearance. But when Soraya's mother loses her job, and her little brother faces complications with his sickle cell disease, managing her time, money, and emotions seems impossible. Desperate, Soraya decides to hustle her need-sensing ability for cash, a choice that may not only lead her to Deja, but put her in the same danger Deja found herself in. Alright, so I'm a little hesitant about this one, and here's why. There are so many different great concepts that are happening, and I'm not sure how they're all going to fit together. You've got the missing persons mystery, the money spree crime, complicated family dynamic, a commentary on social injustice, a fantastical ability in our main character that, depending on what we're doing with that, might require a little bit of a world build. And all of these seem to be a little disjointed from one another while a little connected to one another. I don't know. If Desamours can pull this off, I think that this is going to be an exceptional novel, like a 2025 Tayshaus winner novel. If the threads don't come together well, then I don't know what this story is going to look like. But it is definitely original, it is definitely interesting, and it definitely needed a spot on the list. Needy Little Things publishes on February 4th. Next up is The Otherwhere Post by Emily J. Taylor. This is a young adult fantasy with a mystery woven through. The New York Times bestselling author of Hotel Magnifique returns with another glittering dark fantasy about a deadly mystery that spans worlds and a teenage girl who must risk everything to uncover the truth. 7 years ago, Mauve Abinthy lost everything. Her world, her father, even her name. Desperate to escape the stain of her father's crimes, she lives under a fake name, never staying in one place long enough to put down roots. Then she receives a mysterious letter with 4 impossible words. Your father was innocent. To uncover the truth, she poses as an apprentice for the Otherwhere Post, where she'll be trained in the art of scriptomancy, the dangerous magic that allows couriers to enchant letters and deliver them to other worlds. But looking into her father's past draws more attention than she'd planned. Her secretive, infuriatingly handsome mentor knows she's lying about her identity, and time is running out to convince him to trust her. Worse, she begins to receive threatening letters, warning her to drop her investigation, or else. For Mauve to unravel the mystery of what happened 7 years ago, she may have to forfeit her life. To be completely transparent, nothing about this necessarily stood out to me as super original, but it did make me nostalgic for the kinds of stories that I read when I was younger that got me into fantasy and got me into reading. There's actually quite a few books on this list that gave me those kind of nostalgic feels, from the fantasy to the magic that has to do with writing to the mystery. I don't know, I kept coming back and thinking about this novel, and so it got to a point where I was like, okay, it doesn't feel very original, but clearly I'm interested in it, therefore it needs to go on the list. The Otherwhere Post publishes on February 25th. Next up is The Rose Bargain by Sasha Peyton Smith. This is a young adult fantasy romance that also has that competition theme. The Cruel Prince meets the selection in this captivating duology opener, brimming with heart-pounding romance, vicious competition, and beautiful cruel fae, from the New York Times bestselling author of The Witch Haven, Sasha Peyton Smith. Every citizen of England is granted one bargain from their immortal fae queen. High society girls are expected to bargain for qualities that will win them suitors, a rare talent for a piano in exchange for one's happiest childhood memory, a perfect smile for one's ability to taste. But Ivy Benton's debut season arrives with a shocking twist, a competition to secure the heart of the Queen's fae son, Prince Bram, a prize that could save Ivy's family from ruin, and free her sister from the bargain that destroyed her. Yet every glittering fae deal has a rotting heart, and at the center of this contest is a dark plot that could destroy everything Ivy knows. Sweepingly romantic and deceptively enchanting, this alternate history romantasy will enthrall readers of Holly Black, Stephanie Garber, and Adeline Grace. I'm always a fan of fantasy that has a competition in it because I like working through the obstacles and the riddles and the puzzles and everything with the character. But I like the added elements to this. I like the fact that there are the fae bargains that are happening within this high society, and that it's an alternate history. So we're Bridgerton, I'm assuming, era is what's happening here. I like that we've got this family dilemma that we as readers don't know what's happening with. There's just a lot going on here that I really like and that checks boxes for me and that I can see working together. The Rose Bargain publishes on February 4th. Next up is the Spirit Collection of Thorne Hall by J. Ann Thomas. This is a young adult supernatural gothic horror. A young woman forced to live with ghosts in a mansion frozen in time must decide between forbidden love and the price of freedom in this gothic fantasy where Jane Eyre meets the haunting of Bly Manor, perfect for fans of Starling House. At Thorne Hall, a grand estate nestled in the Berkshires, 15 restless spirits roam, bound within the mansion's walls since the Gilded Age. Elegy Thorne bears the weight of her family's curse to preserve the mansion as it was in the 1890s, using ancient folk songs to keep the spirits silent and secret in order to avoid deadly consequences. When a mischievous child spirit wreaks havoc on the manor, the Thorne family calls upon their trusted preservationist to restore the mansion. He brings along his son, Atticus, a vibrant man full of life and ideas of modernization, and Elegy is captivated by him, igniting a longing for freedom that she's never dared to embrace. Torn between her desire to follow her heart and her duty to her family and its legacy, Elegy begins searching for a way to release the spirit collection back to the afterlife, and set both herself and the ghost free. With century-old secrets, peculiar magic, and spirits both whimsical and deadly, Thorne Hall will haunt and enrapture readers, and you might just not want to leave. So based on the comps alone, this should be an outstanding book for me. Like, all three of those comps are absolutely books and, you know, adaptations that I truly, sincerely enjoyed. I think that there's some cool questions going on here, like why in the world does a spirit collection exist to begin with? So as soon as I can grab this, I'm going to. The Spirit Collection of Thorne Hall publishes on February 11th. Next up is These Vengeful Wishes by Vanessa Montalban. This is a horror, folklore, young adult. A teen girl moves to a small town and discovers a mysterious wishing well possessed by Lisegua, a vengeful female spirit with the face of a horse skull, in Vanessa Montalban's new YA fantasy standalone. When her father is arrested, aspiring artist Cece moves back to her mother's hometown of Santa Aguas, an eccentric small town steeped in the legend of Lisegua, the specter of a wronged witch who appears on lonely roads at night, luring untrustworthy men to their deaths. Cece and her mother take up residence in the abandoned manor of the Sevilla family, rumored to have been cursed by Lisegua, where she begins to uncover a past that seems to be connected to her mother. The more she learns of the Sevillas, the more Cece finds herself forming a strange affinity with the feared Segua, who she suspects is the one inspiring her paintings of a mysterious door in the forest. When the very door Cece has been painting appears in the woods, she decides to venture through it with her new friend, Jamie. Together, they discover a well, guarded by the statue of a veiled woman. A well for granting wishes. The Well of Lisegua. What starts off as harmless fun quickly escalates into something sinister when Cece realizes that the wishes are putting the people she loves in danger and testing her own penchant for vengeance. After learning others are also searching for the well, Cece must confront the truth of her mother's past and prevent Lisegua's wishes from being used for the wrong reasons. Cece knows too well how much people will sacrifice for power. Every wish has its price, and Lisegua never forgets the ones who have wronged her. Everything about this checks boxes for me. I love a story centered on folklore. I was a little obsessed with La Llorona a few years back, so when I read this blurb, I immediately went back to that time in my life. But I think it's also really interesting to have this concept of dark family secrets, to have this mystical wishing well that Cece is trying to protect, kind of essentially, from other people. There's a lot going on here beyond just the folktale that has to do with Cece's own journey, which I think is really interesting. And I think this thought of how far are you willing to go for vengeance is a nice theme to run through this novel. These Vengeful Wishes publishes on February 4th. Next up is Under the Same Stars by Libba Bray. This is a young adult historical fiction with some mystery woven through and potentially maybe a little bit of magical realism. From New York Times bestselling author Libba Bray comes an evocative and groundbreaking young adult historical mystery that examines truth, rebellion, reconciliation, and what must be sacrificed for a better world. It was said that if you write to the bridegroom's oak, the love of your life will answer back. Now, the tree is giving up its secrets at last. In 1940s Germany, Sophie is excited to discover a message waiting for her in the bridegroom's oak from a mysterious suitor. Meanwhile, her best friend, Hannah, is sending messages too, but not to find love. As World War II unfolds in their small town of Kleinwald, the oak may hold the key to resistance against the Nazis. In 1980s West Germany, American teen transplant Jenny feels suffocated by her strict parents and is struggling to fit in, until she finds herself falling for Lena, a pock-rock girl hell-bent on tearing down the wall separating West Germany from East Germany, and meeting Frau Hermann, a kind old lady with secrets of her own. In spring 2020, New York City, best friends Miles and Chloe are in the first weeks of COVID lockdown and hating Zoom school when an unexpected package arrives from Chloe's grandmother, leads them to investigate a cold case about two unidentified teenagers who went missing under the bridegroom's oak 80 years ago. I read a trilogy by Libba Bray when I was in high school, and to this day, I can't remember the name of the trilogy, but I still remember different aspects and themes of that trilogy, and I remember falling in love with Bray's writing. So seeing this novel was by this author automatically piqued my interest, but I love historical fiction that has multiple storylines running through it. It's just a fan favorite of mine. And something about reading the blurb, I just knew I was going to finish this book sobbing. So, hesitant on this one just because I know it's going to make me so emotional, and I am an emotional reader, but super excited for this one because I know it's going to make me emotional. Under the Same Stars publishes on February 4th. Next up is Upon a Starlit Tide by Kel Woods. This is a retelling that takes inspiration from both Cinderella and The Little Mermaid, It is an alternate history, it is fantasy, it is adult, there's a lot going on here, which you'll see in the blurb. Upon a Starlit Tide is a dark and enchanting fairy tale inspired historical fantasy combining elements of The Little Mermaid and Cinderella into a wholly original tale of love, power, and betrayal. St. Malo, Brittany, 1758. For Lucien Lyon, the youngest daughter of one of St. Malo's wealthiest ship owners, the high walls of the city are more hindrance than haven. While her sisters are interested in securing advantageous marriages, Luce dreams of escaping her elegant but stifling home and joining a ship's crew. Only Samuel, Luce's best friend and an English smuggler, understands her longing for the sea, secretly teaching her to sail whenever she can sneak away. For Luce, the stolen time on the water with Samuel is precious. One stormy morning, Luce's plans are blown off course when she rescues Morgan de Chatelain, the youngest son of the most powerful ship owner in St. Malo, from the sea. Immediately drawn to his charm and sense of adventure, she longs to attend the glittering ball held in honor of his safe return, and begins to contemplate a different kind of future for herself. But it is not only Luce's hopes that are at stake. The local Fae are leaving Brittany and taking their magic with them, while the long-standing war with the English means St. Malo is always at risk of attack. As Luce is plunged into a world of magic, brutality, and seduction, secrets that have long been lost in the shadowy depths of the ocean begin to rise to the surface, as dangerous as any reef. Even so, she finds that the truth of her own power is growing brighter and brighter, shining like a sea glass slipper, or the scale of a sea maid's tail. Alright, color me intrigued because I don't think I have ever heard a synopsis like this. Like, automatic points for originality. That being said, the same hesitancy that I had with Needy Little Things is popping up here because there's so much going on, and I'm a little concerned that all of these threads are not going to fit well together. You've got the historical setting with specific societal implications due to that setting. You've got an inspiration drawn from The Little Mermaid and Cinderella. You've got a forbidden romance, a war between real countries that's intermixed with a fantastical plotline of fae and magic. I'm assuming that we've got some kind of chosen one magic plot here with our protagonist. And again, it's one of those where, like, if the author pulls this off, I think this is going to be a top read for me in the year of 2025. I also think it would be very easy to not pull this off. So this is another book where it's like, it just depends on how everything comes together. But I am excited. Points, like I said, for, if nothing else, originality. Upon a Starlit Tide publishes on February 18th. Next up is When the Earth Was Green by Riley Black. This is a little different from the books that I normally choose. It is a natural sciences nonfiction, but I was a Blue Planet girly, and when I read the blurb, I immediately thought to myself, like, if this was a documentary, I would absolutely be watching it in this moment. Therefore, the book made the list. A gorgeously composed narrative nonfiction book about the long-standing relationship between prehistoric plants and life on Earth. Immaculately framed by ancient stone, the leaves look as if they were pressed between the gray pages of a great geological diary. If we were to see the plant alive, we would simply pass it by, but the fossil is a whisper from a time more than 55 million years ago, when alligators dwelled within the Arctic Circle and gigantic dragonflies buzzed through the air. This little plant is an entry point into the lost world. Past, present, and future, this ancient specimen has roots in all of them. We often retell the history of life on Earth as a series of great moments in which fascinating animal life springs forth, all while forgetting the plants that made these moments possible. But we can't understand our own history without them, or our future. Dinosaurs, saber-toothed cats, and all mammals would be nothing without the efforts of their leafy counterparts. Even humans would likely not exist had plants not taken root to sow the land for our amphibious ancestors. Using the same scientifically informed narrative technique that readers loved in the award-winning The Last Days of the Dinosaurs, in When the Earth Was Green, Riley Black brings readers back in time to prehistoric seas, swamps, forests, and savannas, where critical moments in plant evolution unfolded. Each chapter stars plants and animals alike, underscoring how the interactions between species have helped shape the world we call home. As the chapters move upwards in time, Black guides readers along the burgeoning trunk of the Tree of Life, stopping to appreciate branches of an evolutionary story that links the world we know with one we can only just perceive now through silent stone, from ancient roots to the present. So again, this made it onto the list because I read it and I genuinely have a curiosity in this. If it was a documentary, I would have already watched the documentary. Because it's a book and it's a nonfiction, those are so much harder for me to actually pick up and read. But again, it's a book that I kept thinking about after I read the blurb, and I was like, okay, it has piqued my interest enough that I do want to come back to it and hopefully will actually end up picking this novel up. When the Earth Was Green publishes on February 25th. Next up is The Wolf Tree by Laura McCluskey, and this is an adult mystery thriller. An island lost in time, a cryptic pagan past, secrets that should stay buried. Eilean Eater is a barren, windswept rock inhabited by a few hundred humans and sheep. Until now, the island was best known for the unsolved mystery of the 3 lighthouse keepers who vanished back in 1919. But when a young man is found dead at the base of the same lighthouse, 2 detective inspectors are sent from Glasgow to investigate. Georgina George Lennox is finally back from leave after a devastating accident and happy to be on the case. That is, until she meets the hostile islanders, who seem determined to thwart the investigation, and their enigmatic priest, who seems to be a part of every interview. Then there's George's partner, Richie, who just wants to close the case and head home to his family. He doesn't see that there is something off about this tiny community. He hasn't heard the wolves howling or seen the dark figures at their window at night. He's too busy watching George as if waiting for her to break. With the dark secrets of the island swirling around them, George and Richie must decide who to trust and what to believe as they spin closer to the terrible truth. Laced with Scottish legend, yet sharp and modern in voice, The Wolf Tree announces a spell-binding new voice in crime and mystery fiction. This was like half nostalgia pick, half ambiance pick for me, because I will never not be weirdly obsessed with lighthouse stories, especially when they have like that dark atmosphere and that mystery surrounding them, especially a murder mystery. Like, that's just a setting that will always pique my interest. But on top of that, I read this and for some reason immediately thought back to all of the Nancy Drew books that I had read and all of the Goosebumps books that I was read, and I was like, I have to read this book. I also think it's really cool that it's set in Scotland. I hope to be visiting Scotland pretty soon. So, I don't know. It's just, again, boxes were checked and I was like, yep, absolutely. The Wolf Tree publishes on February 11th. Next up is You Are Fatally Invited by Andy Pliego, and this is another adult mystery thriller. An exclusive thriller writer's retreat hosted on a private island turns lethal when one of the authors is found murdered in this twisty, locked room mystery. When renowned anonymous author J.R. Allister hires former aspiring writer Mila Delangel to host a writing retreat at his private manor off the coast of Maine, she jumps at the chance, particularly since she has an axe to grind with one of the invitees. The guest list? 6 thriller authors, all masters of deceit, misdirection, and mayhem. Confess the crimes, survive the tropes. Allister and Mila have masterminded a week of games, trope-fueled riddles, and maybe a jump scare or 2. The perfect cover for Mila to plot a murder of her own. But when a guest turns up dead, and it's not the murder she had planned, Mila finds herself trapped in a different narrative altogether. With a storm cutting off the island and the body count rising, Mila must outwit a killer who knows literally every trick in the book. Again, it's just like, yes, 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 yes. I love a locked room mystery. I love an isolated island that's cut off from the main world. When you have all of these together, plus the guests are mystery thriller writers, like, that's an automatic recipe for success, or at least for intrigue. You know, we'll see if it's a success after I read it. But the fact that Mila is already kind of an unreliable narrator and not like your typical heroine protagonist because she had planned a murder and things go wrong because the incorrect person was murdered. Just, I read this and I was smiling. I know it's weird to smile over a murder mystery, but I was like, yes, this sounds phenomenal. And this will probably be the book that I actually buy because I'm letting myself buy one. Only one book. Everything else we're getting through Libby, libraries, all of that stuff. But I get to buy one book a month is what I'm letting myself, telling myself, at least right now. This is probably going to be it because I want it in my hands and it's a mystery, so I want to be able to flip back through the pages. I'm so excited for this. You Are Fatally Invited publishes on February 11th. All right, and last but not least, we have You Between the Lines by Katie Naiman. This is a contemporary adult romance. A former sorority girl starts a prestigious poetry MFA program only to discover that one of her fellow grad students is her high school crush turned nemesis, who can't stop writing about her. No one's more surprised than Lee when a prestigious MFA program in North Carolina accepts her. A former sorority girl, Lee's the first to admit she knows more about the lyrics of Taylor Swift than T.S. Eliot, and she's never been able to shake the all style no substance feedback her high school crush made in their poetry workshop. Bad enough that her tattooed New Yorker tote bag carrying classmates have read all the right authors and been published in the country's leading literary journals. Lee's insecurities become all too real when Will, that same high school crush turned nemesis, shows up at orientation as a first year in the program too. Now, he's William, exactly the kind of writer Lee hates, complete with his pretentious sweater vest and tattered moleskin. Lee's determined to prove herself, and William, wrong by landing the program's highly coveted fellowship. But Will's dead set on it too, and in a small cohort, they can't keep apart for long. When Will submits an intimate poem that's maybe, probably, definitely about Lee to workshop, they're both forced to realize there's more to the other than what's on the page, and what's between the lines may be even more interesting. Alright, I love a book about writers that involves writers. I love a romance between writers, and I especially love a rivals to lovers plotline, so this is hitting so many of the things that I love. It's kind of why I really, really enjoyed Emily Henry's Beach Read. I like Emily Henry to begin with. She's my favorite. I like her. She's my favorite romance author. So this piqued my interest immediately, and I was like, this is right up my alley. Where my hesitancy comes in with this novel is the fact that it sounds a little bit like it's gonna be a pick me, I'm not like other girls / I'm not like other writers situation. I feel like the commentary, with the way that this blurb sounded, can very quickly sweep off into a pretentious manner of like, oh, well, I'm the rule breaker of all of the rule breakers. Like, someone like me shouldn't be able to do this, and you guys are all acting like you're so much better than me, but you're not. I don't know if it's actually going to be like that, but when I read the blurb a second time, I kind of was like, I don't know about this. I really hope it doesn't slip into that territory, but I feel like there's the potential to. And if it starts to even moderately swing in that direction, this will be an automatic DNF for me. I hope it's not, because I love, like I said, writers, books about writing. I love that rivals to lovers trope. Like, there's tropes in here that I really like. It's just, if we start to hit those pet peeves of mine, I'm out. You Between the Lines publishes on February 18th. Alright guys, as promised, I'm going to go ahead and put up the slides of books that are releasing on specific days. Like I said, we're going to have the 22 books that I just went through, but then there are going to be other, like, honorable mentions that are on the slides. I think there's probably 30-something books that you're actually going to see here. For February 4th, we have the following books publishing. For February 11th, we have the following books publishing. February 18th, we have the following books publishing. And for February 25th, we have the following books publishing. Alright, like I said, February 2025 is rocking it with the releases. We've got authors that I'm excited about. We've got, the end of the Emily Wilde trilogy. So down in the comments, let me know which releases you were the most excited about for February, whether they are on the list, on the slides, or if there's something that I just completely skipped over that you know is coming out that I missed. Drop it so that everybody knows, and everybody can, like, especially if you're like me and you try to snag things on Libby as fast as possible, or put that hold in as fast as possible, like, we can all be in there together in the races trying to grab these books. But I'm genuinely so thrilled for many, many, many of these novels. I will probably be trying to read a lot of romances because it is February, but we'll see. I don't know. My TBR really ends up being what comes in on my holds through Libby. If you are a subscriber to my channel and you want to stick around for my little update going into the new year, then you're more than welcome to, because I do have a big change coming to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. So excited that you're able to make it. Those of you who are subscribers know that it's been a hot second since you've seen me. The election really messed with my mental health. And so I took a significant break and time away from social media because I really needed it. I also sat down and started taking a real hard look at, like, what my action plan was going to be and what my next steps were for me and my life. And one of those next steps is the fact that I have to move. Like, I cannot stay where I'm at. And with that in mind, and with me applying for different jobs and things like that, I did end up canceling all of my BookBox subscriptions because it's a lot of money that go into those, and that was fine when it was really the only thing that I was spending my money on, aside from coffee and food, obviously. But with these plans, I decided that the book box subscriptions were not nearly as important as pocketing that money and putting it into savings. So if you have subscribed to my channel because of the book unboxings, unfortunately, those aren't going to be happening anymore. It is sad, but you know, it's the hard truth of having to let go of things as you try to achieve new things. And that was one of the things that I really needed to let go of. I am going to try and be a lot more diligent with actually posting and staying on a schedule with posting. This is something that I enjoy doing. It is something that actually helps my mental health. So, you know, we can expect anticipated releases, monthly wrap-ups, hopefully some reviews. I do a lot of fun little book challenges and things on my own that I've never recorded, and I'll start recording those as well. I've put together a book journal, which was a lot of fun, that I'll probably do a video where I flip through that and show you guys. It's nothing special. It's not nearly as cool as some of the other videos that I watch, but it's achievable for people like me who see the other fancy videos and go, there's no way. So it's just going to be a lot of bookish stuff, but it will no longer be the special edition unboxings, unfortunately. But I hope everyone is doing okay. I hope that you're taking care of yourself. I hope that you are looking towards the future and trying to figure out like what is going to be the best steps for you, whether that's treating yourself to a dinner every week or whether that's hanging out with the fur babies. And we can do that by having some amazing books that we read and we share.